Hi, my name's Ian Wallace. I call myself the Messed Up Counsellor, which is quite an intriguing name. And the podcast you're about to see is one of many, and we've been doing about a year now. So you can look back and see all the things we've talked about with guests and on my own over the process. A lot of the information I use in the podcast initially came from the first book I wrote in 2011. Why do we do that? What do we do about it? And that came out and was the basis of all my learning and understanding at that time, which is going back a few years now. And that process of understanding how the world works for people, how we can alter, change, and adapt it, was kind of what it was there to do with the initial stages. I've made that now an audiobook as well, so it's available on Amazon as an audio file that you can check out and you can download to your heart's content, and hopefully that will be helpful. In the podcasts, we're trying to look at all sorts of things about human interactions, human dynamics, the world, and how we might understand it more or change it more. So it gives you lots of ideas and tools in order to think about and look at different ways of being or dealing with things. And hopefully that brings people together and makes people more able to connect and communicate. Lots of topics. If you ever want to connect to me, just obviously drop me a comment on the podcast and I shall try as much as possible to reply. And if you've got any ideas of things that we might want to use on the podcasts, then please let me know. My name's Ian Wallace. Thanks for looking and thanks for listening. Hi, welcome to Ian Wallace, the Messed Up Counsellor. During the last couple of podcasts, there's been kind of a recurring theme. We've been talking about control, manipulation, behavioural processes, and conflict. So it's kind of like I want to finish that theme off really today. And look at self-destructive behaviours. When I'm working with a behaviour that seems to have some aspect of addictive aspects or some aspects of behaviours that don't really give us what we need. So that can be all sorts of things. Human beings, I've found over the 20 odd years I've been doing this, the thing we fear in our worlds and our lives. Say somebody fears being on the run, for example. Then what we do, which sounds mad, but it is the way we work, is that we push our relationships around us because of that fear of being on our own. But what happens is the very thing we fear is the very thing we create. Which sounds a bit mad, doesn't it, when you're thinking about it? That the scary thing that we really don't want in our world is the very thing that we find happens because of our behaviour, our insecurity. So when we do that, when we create that process, we don't do that consciously. And a lot of what we do is subconscious. It's a reaction. We react to stuff all the time, which we don't understand, mostly. Our subconscious, our reaction, is always an emotional drive, usually. And the process that we're doing doesn't make sense. Why would I create the very thing that I'm scared of? But it happens a lot, and certainly in my work, in my world, that I find people have done that, have made that happen. Now, as I say, they're not consciously wanting that to happen, but it seems like the insecurity of fear, worry, concern of being in our own pushes our relationships to see if they're going to stay. We try to find that security outside of us with our relationships, our world. But actually it's something that's inside of us. The insecurity is an internal thing. but we look to try to provide security externally. Now, I don't necessarily know why that is. I'm not a psychologist. But I think it's because we don't want to see our own insecurity, because that might make it very hard for us to cope, live with our world. So we try and externalize that and try and find it somewhere else. And we find it, or try to find it, in our relationships, in our work, you know. I usually find that the people that do this, and I think we're all prone to doing it in some way, shape or form, but I find the people who are doing this have created the world from obviously the experiences and understanding we've already had. We're not given the world when we're born, we get the world from other people, and how the world works. So that insecurity makes us want to find security. We don't want to look at our own world internally. We want to try and find it externally, and that then pushes. So when I find this happening, it usually goes in cycles. So a lot of the time when I'm doing the history of the people I'm working with, the kind of the world, their life, what's happened before, I'll find that it's a reoccurring cycle. So maybe they've been insecure in their career, for example. So what they do is they push and push and push their careers, and they find that they can't stay. It's become too much, so they start again. So it's a bit like snakes and ladders, in a sense. We build and build and build and build, and then we get to a point where we have to self-destruct it, and we take it away, and then we build and build and build and build. And when we get people like that, their worlds are usually around careers, work, where they do short-term projects. They're very good at getting things moving, getting things happening, making things happen, pushing, driving to make it happen. But then when it is happening, they get very awkward with it. They feel very uncomfortable. So they leave and find something else to put their energy into, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because project workers, that's what they do all the time. That's part of their world. So they don't want continuation. They want something that's intense, gets happening, moves away, starts again. But in relationships, that's not necessarily as easy, because that comes with commitments. Might have family, might have kids, might have a mortgage, might have financial commitments, might have other people that come with that relationship. So it becomes a lot more destructive sometimes, because we're affecting other people's worlds and lives. So if we've got our own world that is in these cycles, or we have a partner or somebody we know that's in these cycles, then you'll usually find they're never content. They're never happy. They usually can't just relax and do nothing. They have to do something. They have to be on the go. Their brain has to be active, busy, those kind of things. Because there's this insecurity that we're trying to find elsewhere, we're trying to find outside of ourselves. If we can understand that, which is not easy, obviously, destructive behaviours are never easy to understand. But if we can understand that, then we need to look at our internal insecurity that creates that process. And how we work that is by sitting, exploring self, not with other people. And if we can sit and we can explore self, we can understand ourselves more, and where those insecurities, those behavioural process might come from, then we can fill our insecure hole. And I think, personally, we all have a part of us that is insecure. I think being born is an insecure process, as I explore in the book. And that birth means that we're in this nice self-contained package, the womb, been fed, nurtured, looked after, we're safe, we're secure to a certain degree. And then all of a sudden we're born. And we've had this cord that has been keeping us alive, that's now not. And we have to breathe air, and we come into a much bigger space, usually. So there's a whole range of trauma, of insecurity, if you like. Obviously, I've never given birth. But I think for me, the process is that experience that we go through, all of us go through, to be fair, we're all born, then that does affect us. And depending on how that experience was, or how long it went on for, will probably affect us more. So if we've all got that insecure hole, then we try and fill it quite naturally. And if we do fill it with our attachment, which is kind of the theory stuff, secure attachment, then it means that hole's going to be less and less effective in our relationships, in our world, because we are secure in ourselves. But if we go through a trauma as we're growing up, say a parental figure that we're very close to, and has been providing that secure attachment, then if they're no longer there for whatever reason, then that hole will expand, because the person that was helping us to fill the hole is no longer there. So that then creates a bigger insecurity. Now we then look for something to create that security again. We look for something to fill that hole. And that might be anything. That might be our career, that might be another relationship, that might be another person, that might be anything, that we can latch on to create that security. But the problem with the world is it is not something you can control, and it is always going to be insecure. We are never in control, so we can never make the world the way we should make it to keep that security. If we have a job, a role, a function that creates that security, then there's always a likelihood it's not going to be there for all sorts of reasons. So we can never fully fill it. There's always going to be a hesitancy. Now, if we've gone through an experiential process where our secure attachment is no longer there, then whatever we attach to fill that hole is always going to be a worry, a concern whether it's going to be there in the future. Because we've lost one, a secure attachment, there's a likelihood we might lose the other, or the next one that we've connected to. So once we've gone through that process of rejection, disconnection, whatever you want to call that, then it's always going to fuel us with that worry, concern for the future, and that something we thought was safe and secure wasn't. And that's got nothing to do with people, that's life. Then that fear, that worry, that concern that another thing that we connect to might not be there, we will connect to fill the hole, or try to fill the hole, with that fear, worry and concern always in the background. Or we'll become a loner. We'll say, okay, then nothing's going to fill that hole, so I'm not going to attach to anything or anybody. So we can create that process of rejection ourselves because of the fear of rejection or disconnection. And that's a weird world when you're trying to understand it. But that process of behaviour that might, doesn't always have to, but it might create that instability and that worry, that fear, that concern, so we take ourselves completely away from it. We don't allow ourselves the opportunity, even if it comes along, we will reject it or dismiss it. Because that fear, that worry, that concern of being rejected is always more emotionally charged than if we reject. If we take control of a rejection and we push away, so we reject the thing or the person or whatever it is, that's always going to be easier for us to cope with emotionally. And if somebody else does that to us, it's going to be harder for us to cope with emotionally. So when we're looking at this destructive behaviour, when we're looking at this fear of being connected, if you like, that insecurity, don't always fall into that subconscious reactionary process of it's better if I don't connect. It might be emotionally safer not to connect, but that might not be the best thing for you. So we need to push against these kind of drives and scripts if they don't fit, if they don't serve as any person, if they don't make our lives better or more fulfilled. We need to push against them. And instead of that fear, worry and concern driving us to disconnect, it's the very thing we need to do to connect. Because the connection will be awkward, emotionally, mentally, whatever fear you've got. But it's going to be the one that challenges those drives and scripts and might give us a better life. Not always, because there's no guarantee with anything. But if you can do that, if you can push against that reaction, that behavioural process, and see if you feel more safe or more secure, then you've got an option of making the world a bit different, challenging those past historical situations of it being a negative process to being a positive process. I would say there's no guarantees in that, but at least you'll be trying something new, something different. So instead of disconnecting, removing yourself, then see if the other way is better. If it's not better, then obviously you can still disconnect. Not a problem. But if you challenge those things to see if it works or it doesn't work, at least then you'll be having your life the way you want it. I have a strapline I use in the books and in some of my publications. Have the life you want, not the one other people think you should have. So with the behaviours, have the life you feel is best for you. Don't keep repeating the cycle that obviously was given to you, because we're given the world, that doesn't actually give you that security, safety, feeling of being fulfilled, whatever it is. Hopefully that's made sense. Hopefully that's given you ideas to think about. As with all things, please subscribe, like and share, because again, as I always say, you never know if other people might be going through something where they're trying to understand these kind of things, and you might just help a friend, help somebody you care about. Thanks very much for listening and watching. I'm Ian Wallace. Take care. Have a good life. Hi, thanks for listening to the podcast, and hopefully it made sense and was interesting for you. Please subscribe, like and share. With the podcasts, you never know who will be helped by the things we talk about, things we share. We don't normally tell people our problems, but by sharing it and helping other people to understand things. The book Insecurity, It's All About Me, is also available now through Amazon. And it gives you an understanding of what drives insecurity, how insecurity works within our human dynamics, and how you can get a much more secure connection with people. It gives you lots of ideas and thoughts, which is really good. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, like, share, hit the button. And if you've got any comments, please give me them. and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks very much. Take care.